Flipped classroom discussion. A slightly different way to approach learning. This is going to be a short video just to outline what the flipped classroom is, and hopefully it will help to jumpstart our discussion during the presentation, and we can talk about the different pitfalls, the different methods, the different strategies, and different resources that are available to you if you want to continue with the flipped classroom. So for this is a video similar to what I showed to the students and also to the parents and also to the faculty when I was explaining what the flipped classroom was. In this case, I've already rearranged these, but typically in class, you would have your lecture and you would have your labs and some group discussion in class. But at home, primarily, you're going to have your practice and your lab reports. And by putting the lecture at home for a flipped classroom, it allows you to have a lot more time in class to be able to not only do your labs and group discussions, but also for most of the students to be able to finish their lab reports as well as do a significant amount of practice in class. And this is one of the big advantages of a flipped classroom. What I do want to emphasize right now is that the flipped classroom itself is still a lecture-based classroom. We're just changing the form of the lecture. For this change, I did some research beforehand, and I read the book by Samson Bergman, which I'll provide you a link during the presentation. But I had a few driving questions. What is best for the students' learning? When do students need my physical presence the most? And how can I personalize each student's education? And these are three driving questions that I've had for a while, and they will continue to be my driving questions that inform my decisions for what I want to do as the way I teach. So, what is best for the students' learning? What I liked about the flipped classroom were these four things: ownership, pace, accountability, and collaboration. Ownership and pace and accountability are ones that I've done really well on so far. Collaboration, I'm still trying to work on how to encourage the students to work together and how to provide them with an environment where they feel comfortable trusting each other and helping each other rather than just competing with each other. But in the flipped classroom, the students take more ownership over their work and over their learning process, and also with the way I've designed my particular classroom, they are in charge more so of their pace, and this is an area where I want to grow in, and this also keeps the students more accountable because they are more responsible for the material. When do students need my physical presence the most? Basically for guided practice, collaborative work, and group questions. And what I came to realize was the students don't actually need my presence for the basic lectures if I can pare it down to a simple idea. And then in class, that's where we can go through the more in-depth discussions, we can go through more questions, we can go through more guided practice so I can show them how to do specific problems. And also, this is, again, an area where I want to continue to grow in, is with the group discussions and the group questions. What I've found out so far is that some groups and some students choose to do really well with this part and really engage with each other, but a large number of students choose not to do that. So I'm looking for ways to encourage that with the students in the future. And then how can I personalize each student's education? I have small group interactions, more personal help in class, more time for remediation in class, and then the pace dictated more by the students. And so for these, I'm looking more for ways of bringing the classroom into smaller and smaller groups so that I can engage with the students on a more individual basis. So that is where the small group interactions and the more personal help and more time for remediation come into play. And then again, I wanted the students to be more in charge of their pace. And so I can briefly explain more of that in just a little bit. So how does this work in my particular classroom? I recommend a composition notebook. Many students actually choose to do their notes in a digital notebook called OneNote, and I also have a OneNote file that I give to them, which I'll show you in a little bit. And then my videos that I create, similar to this one, they need to watch almost every night. So far, in first term, I have about 26 videos. Other terms are a little bit less, I think around 23 videos each. But they are averaging right around 10 minutes. My first year, I was doing 10 to 15 minutes, and they tend to be pretty long when you get to 15 minutes. So most of mine are right around the 10-minute mark. For me, I require them to take notes and at least attempt all questions in the video. I have what are called priming questions, which I'll show you after the video. And there are also practice problems in many of the videos. And in order for them to receive full credit, they need to have notes, those primary questions answered, and at least attempt the practice problem. So in class, after video, the first 5 to 10 minutes are for their small group discussions. This is where they can ask each other questions, and this is also where I'm going around checking their notes, checking to see if they've watched the video, as well as to listen for the questions that they have for each other and whether they're on task. And then after that, we do our class discussion, and that's where we go through our priming questions and the practice problems. And then from there, any other questions that the students might have regarding the material or anything else that might be related. After that, I give them time to work on their practice problems from their worksheets and then online practice. And this is also time for labs. The way I typically try to organize my particular classroom is when I give them a lab or an activity or an online practice as an assignment, I typically try to give them 1 full week. And I overlap them so they can figure out how they need to organize their time, but they need to finish it within that allotted time. And I try to do my best not to micromanage them as best I can. So the way that I've been able to do my videos and the way I've run my classrooms. At Marist here, we all have the Lenovo X230Ts, which are great because they have a touchscreen, so I can write on the screen. But there are many other options for other computers out there if you don't have a touchscreen or if you don't have a Windows. There are many flipped classroom teachers that are using Macs, and so you can use a Mac and you can use a separate microphone, and then you can use a separate write-on tablet, things like that. I decided to go with a pretty nice microphone. It's a Blue Yeti, and I have a shock mount, I have the desk mount, and a pop filter and all of that, but you don't need to go that expensive if you don't want to. For my presentations, I've intentionally left it for the full screen here, so you can see that I'm using a Smart Notebook, which is just a standard piece of software that I transitioned to from PowerPoint once I started using a smart board. For my recordings, and I'll actually show you the window here, this is NCH Debut, and it's free for personal use, and you can see that it's capturing the video, and I'm going to move that back off screen. And then I host all my videos on YouTube because that's the most convenient for me. I don't have to worry about hosting it. And it seems to be the most convenient for the students. It's just that it's going to be public to everyone, so if that matters. For Marist, they require us to use a simple Google site, so mine is very simple. And I've set one up for this GISA presentation, so for some resources and other things. I also use a OneNote file that I share with the students, and I can show you a brief example of that. And so here you can see with this, I have an introduction page, and let me go and maximize that. And you can see some of the links that I have, and then I'll have the different pages. I'll have graph paper if they need it, equation sheets, syllabi, and then from there I give them a link to some blank PDF files if they want to use those for their notes. And then I have extra practice, I have different labs that I have here, and then you can see all of the different types of things that I share with the students. And this is so that I don't print out labs and activities and worksheets. I do everything digitally online, and then when they're ready to turn it in, I simply use turnitin.com for submitting work, so that I'm not spending time at the printers or the copiers and trying to collect work from them. I simply set the time for the deadline, and they need to get it in by that time. If they don't, for me, it's half off if they don't get it in on time. Now, from here, where do I see myself? Where I would like to go is a flipped mastery classroom, and I'm working with the other physics teacher now on a mastery model for next year. And something that I'm personally trying to work on more and more is trying to structure the classroom more for groups to naturally come together, whereas I don't want to mandate them to work in groups, but I want them to be collaborating with each other. I also would like to utilize a learning management system, so this will be like Moodle or Blackboard, and I have a lot of links that if you're interested in that I can show you. I want to utilize this in particular for online quizzing. This is going to allow me to use technology to help me more, so that I don't have to grade as much, hopefully, and I can spend more time actually integrating and working with the students. And then I've been thinking about integrating a project in each term, but that is still more down the road for me. But we're going to hopefully discuss and figure some things out for all of us.